When I was 19, I worked in the grocery department at Wild Oats, later bought out by Whole Foods in Colorado Springs. I started hooking up with a girl who worked as a cashier there. She was a year or two older than me, and had her own apartment in a new development that was built in the foothills, a few miles outside the city. We had finished having sex in the hot tub area of her building one night, and I saw on the clock on the wall above us that it was 2:30 in the morning. I was still living at home at that point, and my stepdad had an annoying habit of waking up to the slightest sound. In high school, he had caught me stumbling and drunk more than once. I said goodbye to her and raced home. The road between her new development in the city had mostly fields on both sides at the time, with the middle school at a bend in the road. The speed limit was 40 miles per hour, but there were no other cars, so I was driving 70 miles per hour. As I reached the middle school, a flash of light caught my eye. A cop was sitting in his car in the school parking lot. I tried to slow down, but he had seen me speeding, and I was quickly pulled over. I'd never been pulled over before, and turned off my car, but not my headlights. I rolled down my window and watched through my rearview mirror as he walked up to the car. "Hello," he said. "Do you know how fast you were going?" I told him I wasn't sure, but I was sorry if I had been speeding at all. He had clocked me at 60 miles per hour. He asked for my license and registration, and after awkwardly looking for my registration for a long amount of time, I handed them to him, and he walked back to his car. I sat in my car and looked out at the city in the distance. He came back and told me that since I had nothing on my record, he was going to write me a ticket for going 10 miles over the speed limit. He pulled out his ticket book and flipped a page. At that moment, his walkie-talkie started going crazy. I couldn't understand what was being said, but he grabbed it and listened for a moment. And I could tell from his face it was serious. He put the walkie-talkie back, closed the ticket book, and looked hard at me. "You got lucky. Go home, son, and slow down." He ran back to his car, and a moment later raced by me in the direction of the city. I sat there and watched him go, and gave a big thank you to the universe for my good fortune. I turned the key on my ignition. Nothing. I turned it again. Completely dead. I looked out of my headlights and realized my mistake. I tried a few more times before giving up. This was before everyone had a cell phone, so I had no way to call my parents or my insurance company. I decided to walk into the city, where I could see from a distance a Safeway grocery store. I clicked on my hazard lights and happened to glance in my rearview mirror. A set of headlights turned on in the darkness, and a minivan materialized out of the night. It pulled up next to me. It was an old maroon minivan with wood paneling on the sides. A middle-aged, balding, rather heavyset man was driving. He rolled down his passenger window. "Having car trouble?" he asked. I told him what had happened, and he nodded and smiled. His smile was kind and unthreatening, and he offered to jump my car. He asked if I had jumper cables. I didn't think I did, but he told me no problem, and thought he probably had some. He pulled his minivan around so the front of our cars were facing each other. We got out, and after popping the hoods, he scrounged in the back of his minivan and produced a pair of cables. He showed me how to apply them to the battery of my car, and a short while later, my car was running. We chatted for a moment, and I learned his name was Russ. I wanted to ask him what he was doing out in the middle of essentially nowhere at 3 a.m., but thought it would be rude, since he had been only kind to me. We shook hands and got back in our cars. He backed up and pulled up next to me, so our driver's side doors faced each other. "Thanks again," I told him. "I'm so grateful to you." He smiled his kind smile and nodded, then looked forward towards the foothills and the darkness of the mountains beyond. He was quiet for a few moments. "Can I ask you something?" he eventually asked. "Sure." He looked at me. "Are you an angel?" I laughed. "Actually, I was going to ask the same thing to you," I told him. He nodded and looked away again. I needed to know what was forefront on my mind. "Russ, can I ask you something? What are you doing out here?" "I just like helping people," he answered. He shook his head. "Huh. I could have sworn you were an angel." He waved and drove off. I watched his taillights turn around the bend and disappear. I was a mix of emotions, but I would sort them out later. The clock on my car read 3:30. I needed to get home. I drove towards the city. As I went down a slope in the road, there were flashing lights coming up on my right. Several cop cars, an ambulance, and a fire truck were semicircled around an accident. As I got close, I saw a familiar old maroon minivan with wood paneling flipped over and crushed. The cop who had pulled me over was standing near the white line of the street and was writing something down. My insides clenched up and went cold. I slowed almost to a stop, and he looked up at me. "Who is that?" I called out to him. My voice sounded to me like I was screaming at the top of my lungs. "Is that Russ?" The cop looked hard at me, then motioned his head towards the city. "Go home, son, and slow down." Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below, and tell me what you thought of this narration. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for updates, and if you'd like to get early videos, shoutouts, and much more, I'd appreciate it if you check out my Patreon page. It's a place where you can help support my channel while getting awesome rewards in the process, and every pledge helps out a ton, no matter the size. So if you'd like to see all the rewards I offer and consider becoming a patron, it'd mean a ton to me if you'd click the link in the description and just check it out. And don't forget to show some love to the amazingly talented authors who make these narrations possible. Have a good night, everybody. Cheers.